For those of you who don't know me, is it okay if I tell you just a little bit about myself and why you might consider listening? I did not say believing, I said listening to what I have to say. With all humility, I went from broke and borrowing $2,000 on my credit card to becoming a millionaire in only 2.5 years. I also opened the largest retail fitness chain in the entire world. I founded what was the largest personal success training company in the entire world. I have marketed over $500 million worth of product. I happen to be the author of the #1 New York Times, #1 USA Today, and #1 Wall Street Journal bestseller, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, which has sold over 2 million copies and is in 39 different languages. I currently have well over 1 million students, and my courses are being taught in 35 different countries all around the world without, and I repeat, it's a big one, without me being there. And most importantly, I never, ever, ever, ever have to work another minute in my life if I don't want to. Sound good? Well, it's great now, but I can still remember when it wasn't great. In fact, I can remember when it was a complete disaster. I grew up with parents that came from Europe. They were in the war. And so when I was young, I was taught that money means survival. Survival. It doesn't mean new clothes, a hot new car, a new boat. It means survival. If you had a lot of money, you lived. If you didn't have a lot of money, you died. It was as simple as that. I left school after first year of college because I wasn't a millionaire yet. And over the next 10 years, I went through 14, let me say that again, 14 different jobs and 12 different businesses. And I was constantly broke. I remember always having to make a choice between putting $5 worth of gas in my car or eating dinner that night. I'll tell you what, it was a horrendous way to live, and trust me, I tried everything, but I just could not create success with anything I did. And it wasn't like I wasn't trying to learn as well. I mean, I was. I read all the books. I listened to all the tapes. I went to all the major seminars. But nothing that they taught me seemed to work for me. I ended up moving back in with my parents and living in their basement because I was broke again. Then by, I guess, a stroke of luck or good fortune or serendipity, I met a friend of my father's that was over at my parents' place, and they were playing cards. And he said that he heard that I was broke and depressed and that I couldn't make a decent living. I said, "Where'd you hear that?" He said, "Your father." I said, "Oh, thanks a lot, Dad." Anyways, he then proceeded to give me some advice that was to change my life. He said, and please listen closely, he said this. He said, "Harv, if you're not doing as well as you'd like to be doing right now, all that means is that there is something you don't know." Now, being a brash young man at the time, I thought I knew pretty well everything. But obviously that wasn't so because of my results, remember? And so, for one of the first times, I actually listened. He said, "Don't you realize that rich people tend to think and do things the same way as each other?" And then he asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, "Well, I want to get rich." And he said, "In what arena?" I said, in business." And he said, "So then why don't you study rich business people and see what they did and what they do?" You know what? I don't even know why I'd ever thought of it before, but I never did. And it just seemed to make sense at the time. It was one of those things. You know what I'm saying? Plus, there wasn't much else going on. So I spent the next 6 months and I devoted myself to studying rich people. And in fact, I did find many, many similarities and principles they seemed to use, especially when it came to business. So I borrowed $2,000 on my credit card and I started a new business and I put these principles to the test. And all I can tell you for sure is that they worked. I opened one of the first retail fitness stores in the world, and I ended up opening 10 more stores in only 2.5 years, and I became a millionaire. And of course, I got myself a car finally, and I got myself a house finally, and I got myself some decent clothes finally. And people who I'd known from before, well, they started asking me, hey, what did you do? They said, what the heck happened? I mean, when I knew you, you were broke. You never had any money. You were always bumming rides because you didn't have a car. Now you're pretty well rich. How did this happen? So I began sharing some of the principles that really made the difference for me between when I was broke and when I became comparatively rich. And this seemed to really resonate with them because they were making some of the big mistakes that I had made. And the information made a huge difference in their lives too. So, needless to say, I've continued to learn more and earn more, and of course, teach more now. As they say, hindsight is 20/20, and so I can really see the difference between who I was and what I used to think and do when I was broke versus now that I'm a multi, and I can go on for a few minutes, millionaire. So that's what you're here to do today. That's what we're here to do, to learn some of those critical differences, because my guess is that many of you are in the same position that I was. Not necessarily broke, but maybe not as rich as you'd like to be either. So,
at 18 years old, Larry was scouted and invited to try out for an NHL professional hockey team. At 24 years old, he arrived from Canada in the USA with only $900 in his pocket and bought a Mercedes for $800. With only $100 left in his pocket, over the next few years, he built his fortune through investing and becoming one of America's top financial planners. At 29 years old, he flew helicopters and created the largest Anthony Robbins franchise on the planet. A few short years later, he created the Rain Club, the largest real estate investor network in the USA, and began touring worldwide. At the same time, Larry began studying the internet and creating software and systems to automate all of his online marketing. Larry currently was the radio host of the nationally syndicated CBS The New Money Show. He is the author of the national best-selling book, The Next Big Thing. He's been featured on CNN, Money Magazine, NBC and CBS TV, Fast Company Magazine, the Los Angeles Times, the New York Times, Reuters, CBS Radio, and numerous other radio shows in the USA. He was even featured in the largest newspaper in Dubai. He is here right now to share with you his proven wealth-building systems so you too can build your own fortune.